and welcome to Community Forum, Cable Channel 2's live talk show. I'm Dick Murphy, and I'll be your host for the next 60 minutes. It seems we're on each week. I've been on a lot lately, but Roy Cohen and I have been co-hosting it. In fact, we'll be seven years old next month, the 22nd of April. And it seems to me that a lot of times we're talking very serious, subjects, and of course we're all bombarded by all the serious things going on, a lot of violence, the recession, unemployment, and we get heavily into politics and people calling each other names and so forth. So I thought tonight it might be a good idea on Community Forum to kind of have a light topic. Now, my guest may not agree with that. He may take offense to that, but I mean it in the right sense. We've got quite an interesting show tonight. I have a single guest, and what we're going to be talking about is UFOs, the phenomenon of unidentified flying objects. And every so often these things crop up in the news and the newspapers and so forth, and I have an interest in it myself. So, and also, we really would like to, we brought the phone in. We took the phone out of mothballs tonight because we used to get so many calls that we figured, well, we just got to give it a rest. But we got the phone here, and the number is, if you're calling from Stoughton, you have to use the 508 code. But if you're calling in, it's 238-8328. And we really want to get some calls tonight because my guest is going to be mentioning a lot of sightings that have occurred throughout, really history, I guess, and particularly lately. And so we'd like to hear from you. If you've seen anything or if you have some questions or comments or whatever, please feel free to call anytime. You don't have to wait till we stop talking or there's a pause or anything. We'll interrupt. As soon as we get a call, we'll put you right on. So we're soliciting telephone calls tonight. Okay, my guest tonight for the full hour is Ron Ricci. Ron is a Stoughton resident, a longtime UFO enthusiast, has done a lot of research and a lot of reading, and he's a real fan of this stuff. And I guess we could call him a believer. He'll get into that. Ron is I believe, a lifelong resident of Stoughton, yes. And he's the manager of the Central Pizza and Seafood down on Central Street there as you head towards the Cobb's Corner section of Stoughton. So let's get right into it. And again, we're looking for your calls, and the number is 1-508-238-8328. Should be a fun hour. It should be of interest, and stay tuned. A little light topic here. You can rebut that if you want. Ron, welcome to Community Forum.
Thank you, Dick. Glad to be here.
Ron was here about, what time did you get here?
Oh, I was setting up all my junk about 2 hours before the show. So.
He's put a lot of work into this, really, and I commend you for it. I guess you'll see it periodically here. In front of us, we have a big table, and we've got a box of magazines. We've got pocket books. We've got hardcover books, soft cover, I should say, whatever.
Tapes.
Magazines, tapes, everything covering the wide subject of UFOs. So, I noticed, Ron, to get us going, that this Unsolved Mystery series that's on regular TV has kind of resulted in kind of a great revival in UFO activity recently, right?
Definitely.
With this series?
Every time there's something in the papers or on TV,
right.
You'll see a lot of UFO sightings.
All of a sudden, right. Oh, you do?
Or there'll be rebirths of old sightings.
All right.
Roswell story, and that's supposedly still going on.
Okay.
So.
All right. So anyway, this has kind of piqued everybody's interest and revived it again. And I know throughout my life, periodically you'll see items in the newspaper about it or on TV or something, and then like there's a little flurry, and then for a period of time goes by and there's nothing. So anyway, can you just give our viewers a little bit of a history as to have these things, are these a recent phenomenon, or do they go back through history?
Well, Dick, UFOs go right back to the Bible.
To the Bible?
Yeah. If you want to read Exodus, they talk about pillars of fire, pillars of clouds. If you want to talk about Ezekiel, they talk about wheels within a wheel, humanoids coming out of the wheels. Right straight through Columbus saw UFOs making his first voyage to America.
He did?
Yep. Many.
Really?
Many. As he approached the mainland, he saw hundreds of them.
So we're going back over several thousand years, maybe?
Very much so.
All right.
Yeah. And pretty well documented for the,
For the times.
For the times, right.
Okay. So it's nothing new or unique to the 20th century, then?
No, by no means.
All right.
It's just that with electronics and stuff, it's easier to get it over the airwaves.
All right. Yeah, okay.
Newsprint and,
Sure. Well, okay, but so we know now that it goes back, and there's been periodic sightings and so forth. But now, we talked before the show, and you said something about the modern era of UFO spottings or sightings or whatever started in 1947.
Right.
So why don't you take it from there?
The very first sighting for the modern era was the Arnold sighting.
All right.
It happened in June 24th, and it was over Mount Rainier in Washington.
Washington State. June 24th, 1947. All right.
Now, Kenneth Arnold was the observer.
Mhm.
He was flying his plane. He was a private pilot. He was flying towards Mount Rainier, and off in the distance he had seen in reverse echelon, I think the military would call it, where the lead ship is lower and they step up.
All right.
9 shimmering, glimmering discs. And when the news media got a hold of it, they flooded him with questions and everything, and they asked him to describe it, and he said it was like a saucer skipping across the water. And voila, there was someone in the newspaper said flying saucer.
So that's where that term
That's
came
where
from.
it came from, right.
All right.
The military automatically put it as unidentified flying objects. That's their standard.
Oh, and then it became known as
Right,
that.
right.
Okay. But now, this guy is he a civilian pilot now?
Yes, I don't know what he's doing today.
No, I mean then.
Yes, he was a civil pilot, right.
Is it daytime now or nighttime? Or?
This was a daytime sighting.
And he's just flying along, and all of a sudden he sees off in the distance
Right.
7 shimmering.
And what makes it interesting is when he did see him flying, it wasn't like they were just going across. He saw him like go behind a mountain. So it actually gave it a 3D. I mean, these were something that disappeared for a second before they really disappeared.
Okay.
They went behind a peak, might have been in front of where he was flying. So,
All
you
right.
know.
Now you've read all about this.
Oh
sighting.
yeah. That everybody that's studied UFOs, that's usually when they read first.
That's the benchmark. Huh?
Right. That's the.
Now, was it good visibility that day?
According to Arnold, it was excellent.
It was. And he's just flying along.
Yeah. He was on some sort of I don't know if he was on a pleasure trip or what.
All right.
Or if he had an actual mission.
Was he by himself in the plane?
Yes.
He was.
Yes, I believe he was.
In your readings about him, is he considered a reputable type of person?
He checked out quite well.
All right.
You know, the locals liked him, and
Okay.
nothing strange or anything.
How long do these things stay around at that time?
Generally,
I mean, you know, that sighting.
per sighting, generally they don't last more than a minute.
Uh-huh.
Very rarely do you see them. One particular sighting, say, they just appear,
Right.
and either they go so fast they're out of sight, you know,
All
or they flick out like you're flicking a light switch.
All right.
They can
So
do
they're
a lot of
not
stuff.
they're not in somebody's view for very long. Huh?
No, and that's what the skeptics say. Gee, you know, you didn't see it, but how can you really register? You know,
Right.
but
Right.
people see more than what they, you know.
All right. So anyway, he sees them, and they didn't try and make any. Any idea how far away he was from them?
If I remember correctly, he was about 9 or 10 miles from Rainier. So that would, if they were just in front of the mountain, they said they would have been traveling very fast and be very, very big. If they were closer, it'd be the slower and the
right.
smaller the ship.
Okay.
But if they were, they said if they were the 10 miles mentioned, they'd be sort of like 200 or 300 feet across, size of a football field.
So these were pretty big objects, and there were 7
Yeah.
distinct. Huh?
Yes. 9.
No, I'm sorry, 9. Now, what did this guy? And then all of a sudden they're gone.
Right.
So what
well,
is
no,
this?
actually, these didn't disappear. They just sort of just went out of his view.
All right.
You know, wherever they were going, they had a purpose, and
All right.
he happened to catch him in the middle somewhere.
Okay. Now he continues his flight, and he lands somewhere, and he must be all excited, right?
Oh yeah, he made the report right off.
Yeah.
The news, the media got a hold of it. And
Yeah.
That started it. But you know, by no means the best sighting.
All right.
There have been better,
Okay.
but it was,
More or less the
for all
first,
intent and purpose, it was the first modern one.
first modern one. Okay.
Just before the Arnold sighting, we're talking World War II, Foo Fighters were seen countless times by both pilots of both sides.
What are Foo Fighters?
That's a name they gave for UFOs.
Oh, all right.
um,
So during World War II,
Right, but they were, with the war going on, they really didn't have time to document
all right.
and really investigate. But these things would come up Buzz B-17s on a mission now.
All right.
They buzz fighter planes.
Really?
Right. The pilots were worried about them.
Wow.
Mainly because of the speed and the performance of the ships.
All right.
I mean, they're flying P-51s,
Zip, zip, huh?
you know, and all of a sudden
This thing goes whipping by.
there's a dish coming by.
Yeah,
you know?
right. Right.
What's he got for an engine? You know.
All of these different sightings, do they all have common characteristics?
I
Ron?
think so.
The saucer type,
Yeah,
you keep hearing that. And the glow or something?
There's a glow from within the ship.
Yeah.
A lot of people claim there's a cigar shape, but I think a lot of times if you take a dish and tip it the right way, you'll have a cigar.
All right.
More or less, you know.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
But they say these saucer ships are more like scout ships, and your cigars ships would be like the mothership, the aircraft carriers.
All right. Now, staying on this first sighting first, and then we'll proceed.
Okay.
Were there other sightings other than Mr. Arnold of that group at that time and place?
If I remember correctly, there were some
There were.
to verify, but not, not as clear as concise. He's got a good look at them.
All right.
And don't forget, you're talking about something that no one was familiar with either.
Yeah, right.
So,
All of a sudden, there
it's-
they are.
Yeah,
Okay.
someone might think it was a halo or a sundog or a mirage he was looking at, you know.
So, now, was there any, did the government take any action on this, or how did the papers play it up, do you know?
Well, of course, I was only a very small.
Well, yeah, but I mean, from your reading.
From what I read,
Yeah.
the Air Force in particular took definite interest.
They did.
They formed an organization to investigate.
At that time?
Right. It went through 3 or 4 different names before it became Project Blue Book.
All right.
It was Project Sign when it started off.
Uh-huh.
And it was more of a, let's investigate it and find an answer and keep them quiet type of a thing.
All right.
Because they don't exist.
That was the Air Force's
Right,
position.
and,
Probably still is, too, right?
Officially, I would imagine, yes.
Officially, right.
I don't think they'll tell you too much. There's been some
Okay.
good stuff on TV, though, about that.
All right,
We
all
could
right.
probably get to that later.
Proceed now. So is that about it on the Arnold thing?
Yes, that more or less
All
takes
right.
care of that.
All right. Now,
And then the next year,
Yeah.
they had a sighting that I personally think it was a balloon.
this is 48 now.
Right.
All right.
It happened on January 7th, and it happened in Kentucky.
Okay.
It was an air base called Godman, and the radar had picked up an object, and it was very high and very far away. Excuse me. And the radar operator asked someone in the control room if they could go outside the tower and pick up a visual on it.
Right.
And a man walked out, and all of a sudden, where the spot was on the radar is where he saw something floating by.
So the radar had picked it
Well,
up.
exactly. So this is I would say, probably first radar visual.
All right.
And
All right.
it wasn't moving. It wasn't moving like Arnold's. Arnold saw his going along. This was more or less a stationary object. That's why I think back in those days, General Mills, I think, was responsible for a lot of skyhook balloons. Huge, big, 100 feet tall
All
balloons.
right. All right.
And
So you suspect that this Mantell sighting
I
might have
think
been
so,
a balloon?
but it turned out to be, like you said, something light. But Frank Edwards said in one of his books,
Uh-huh.
they really are serious business.
All
Because
right.
on this particular case, a man got killed.
How do you explain that now?
Okay, there happened to be a flight of F-51s coming in on just a routine ferry mission or a training mission.
All right.
Air Guard, I think.
Yeah.
And
This is Louisville, Kentucky. now.
right, and the tower at Godman asked the leader if he had spotted anything on his flight. He says no. Well, he says we have an object visual and on radar. Would you please check it out? Well, there was a flight of 4 airplanes, and 2 were low on fuel, so they landed at Godman, and it was Mantell, who was the leader, and a wingman. Now, Mantell saw it immediately. He saw it and started giving chase. He put full power on the ship and
All right.
started really
Yeah.
taking off. He
Yeah.
left his wingman way behind because he
Okay.
hadn't seen it yet.
Okay.
They had radio contact, from what I said, plane to plane, for about 3 or 4 minutes before there was no contact at all.
All right.
Mantell made some startling observations. He said it was metallic, tremendous in size. He was going to try to get up to it. Unfortunately, none of the aircraft were equipped with oxygen. He got above, they say if you get above 15, 16,000 feet, you can't stay there too
Yeah,
long.
right.
It's up in the air whether you can or not.
Right.
He got up there and he said he was going to chase it. And in the meantime, the wingman down below still has no, he lost Mantell, he lost the UFO, he never even saw them.
All right.
That's the last they heard of him.
The last I heard of Mantell?
Right. They found him. They found his plane crashed, completely, totally demolished. He was in it. A lot of people, there was a lot of wild stories saying when the plane did crash, there was no pilot.
Oh, yeah.
The plane was radioactive. There was
Right.
little holes in it from shooting lasers, and none of that.
All right.
It was just a wreck. And the Air Force did go down, and there's quite a bit of testimony as to the fact that they went over with Geiger counters and inch by inch just brought it into a building. And
So did they conclude that, did they find anything? Or?
I'm pretty sure the official
Version.
conclusion would be
Yeah.
that it was a balloon.
All right.
Some say he was chasing a star. Venus might have been bright at that time.
Okay. So now we go along. Now, I suppose when these, the 47 and 48 things, I imagine this is a flurry of publicity on it. And
Oh, yeah.
then you must get some other reports. I saw this, I saw that,
Of course,
right?
everybody wants to get into the act.
Everybody-
You
right,
know,
right,
gee,
like-
you know, they don't want to be left
Like
out.
Jimmy Durante used to say.
Right, and right about this time, too, there was the granddaddy
Uh-huh.
of all sightings. Now, this one here probably was more covered up.
Right.
And then more stimulating to the average person than any other. It was the Roswell sighting.
All right.
Now, you can probably get this book at your library. I happen to pick this one up at the Stoughton Library.
Okay. It's a hardcover.
Right, and
The Roswell Incident by
Right,
Charles Berlitz and William Moore.
And William
All right.
Moore.
Mhm.
This one here was like a dual sighting. It was crash saucers in New Mexico.
When was this?
This was in 1948.
Oh, the same year,
Right.
48. Now,
47, my mistake.
now, supposedly these are saucers that crashed.
Right, one theory is that two saucers came together near Roswell Air Force Base
All right.
in a thunderstorm, and either their navigations let go or they bumped. One fell directly down just
Right.
outside of Roswell, and just it covered 2 or 3 acres, smithereens. It was all pieces of aluminum and
All right.
bits and pieces. And the second one landed intact, according to histrionics here.
Okay.
Which, when the Air Force got there, they found citizens talking with the survivors of this crashed UFO.
Say this again.
Okay, I know it's a hard one to swallow, but when the Air Force did get there,
Yeah.
this happened all quick, and the reports came in more or less simultaneously.
All right.
While they were cleaning up this field south of, a little bit south of Roswell, I think, a big
Yeah.
farm area,
Yeah.
they were sending another contingent to go up and check out what kind of story is this? We got a flying saucer and
Yeah,
little
right.
green men laying on the ground, you know?
Yeah. Right.
According to UFO folklore, they found some local residents comforting some accident victims of a crash. And
All right.
from what I understand, the people thought they were U.S. Air Force men.
Well, did they look like humans?
Yeah, they had uniforms. They were smaller than the average fellow.
Yeah.
In fact, just about this time,
That's
if I
amazing.
may,
Go right ahead.
a very startling picture appeared
Yeah.
in a Cologne, Germany magazine. If you could focus in on the lower one, it shows a little silver-clad UFO pilot being led down a street somewhere in the United States by 2 FBI men. Now, nothing more on this picture has ever come about, but I mean, it does sort of,
All right.
this is what they described as the pilots. They were very short, like 3 feet. The
Okay.
ship was
That was
small.
in West Germany, that one.
That's the paper that let it go,
right.
that released
Oh,
it.
all right.
Supposedly it happened, I'm pretty sure this was in connection with the Roswell incident. That's
Oh,
the way I think.
all
of
right.
it. And they found they found the fellas there, and I guess the Air Force more or less, uh, warned them off. You know,
Did they take
these are,
off? I mean, did these beings take off?
no, most of them were dead.
Oh, they were dead.
There was a number of them. I think there was like 7 or 8 of them. One was dying, and one was alive. And from what I understand, they kept this particular little guy alive for about 5 years,
Now, this
moving him
is,
from base to base.
where did this story come from now? Because I'm sure the Air Force
All right.
denies it. Or
The
doesn't.
first, now, if you read this book here, this goes right through it very nicely. They cleaned that farm field up, and you couldn't find anything. They probably couldn't find a potato in that field, but after they got through with it.
All right.
Everything went back to Roswell,
Yeah.
and then from there, all the parts and pieces were going to be shipped to Caswell. Then from Caswell, they were going to take a Globemaster or something and ship everything to Wright-Patterson, the main base for the Air Force.
Yeah.
And then from there probably to Washington, which I guess they did. But there was one of the principal characters in the book was a Major Marcel, and he talked about having pieces of aluminum-like, sheet metal that you could bend, fold,
Right.
cut with a pair of scissors,
Right.
but you couldn't put a hole in it.
Is that right?
Little I-beams with hieroglyphics written on them. Who knows, probably said made in Mars or something. That was
Well,
probably
whatever.
a stamp, a trademark.
Now, this is an Air Force guy testifying, or
Right,
in
and
the book.
according to them, the clamp was put right on. Stuff was loaded on.
Right.
Brought to Caswell, brought to Wright-Patterson, where the famous Hangar 19 came about. Now that story there, it was resurrected I don't know how many times. It was brought to life again in the early 50s.
Tell us about it. Supposedly this stuff went into that hangar.
Right, and there was, and then the whole flying saucer they found was shipped on board another big transport. From what I understand, it wasn't that big of a machine,
Right.
20, 30 feet across, so they probably put it in a big transport. That was also shipped via Caswell to Ohio.
All right.
They found numerous gadgets, but their gadgets would be, it'd be like letting a child of 3 years old go down and run the nuclear plant at Plymouth.
Right.
You just wouldn't know what he was doing.
I see. I see. So, but
They had all this gear, but they really had nothing, no idea what was about.
But at the time, officially, the line was hush hush.
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh,
That's the end of that.
Don't,
yeah.
you'll be paid a visit.
Aha.
And which probably every one of these books
All right.
tells about a story about someone did see a sighting,
Okay.
and it did make the big papers, and it started going nationwide. They would be visited.
Really?
They gave them an abbreviation called MIBs, Men in Black. These men were usually government agents, supposedly,
Really?
dressed in black Scotland Yard Macintoshes,
Right.
soft hats.
Yeah.
And one interesting facet of the story is they always came up in a brand new car that was 20 years old. Witnesses would say they actually stick their heads in the car. Say it was today, they'd go into a 72 Ford, say,
Right.
and actually smell the newness of the car.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was just,
In other words, the Air Force really hush-hushed it, and they didn't want people talking out.
yeah.
Or
They were, I think myself, from what I read, they're really afraid of a nationwide panic.
Yeah, because they've had studies over the years when they flared up, and usually a lot of these sightings are explained away by
Right.
natural phenomena.
If you could just give them a
phenomena.
minute to find all the facts,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they could explain 97, 98% of them.
You feel that would be
Right,
so.
because your eye can really fool you. You can look at a star, and after a few minutes, you can actually see the star move.
All right.
Say you see one bright star
Sure.
and nothing else to fix on.
Okay.
Your eyes will dance, and all of a sudden you're seeing a flying saucer.
All right, let me ask you this now. There are like clubs, or I don't know what you'd
Oh,
call them,
yes.
organizations
Yes.
that really are into this stuff,
Yes,
right?
right from the beginning.
Now, I can understand that, but how about the scientific community now? Real, expert scientists. Have any of these lent any credence to these sightings?
Well, Project Blue Book originally had J. Allen Hynek, very famous astronomer from Northwestern University.
All right.
He was their debunker.
Okay.
He'd go in and he'd find, he's a smart man, you know,
Yep.
astronomy, and he
Say,
knew
well,
if,
this was
he
this.
knew if Venus was there. He
Yeah.
knew if the conditions were right, a temperature inversion
Yeah.
for a mirage or anything. He was the debunker, and he was a skeptic, because I remember reading the books, and these magazines are loaded with a lot of his stuff. In fact, in the famous Ann Arbor, Michigan sightings back in '66,
Right.
Hynek was responsible for the swamp gas. He'll say now that, from what I read, that the Air Force was just rushing him so, they was pressing him so hard for an answer. This was an excellent sighting. It was at college.
All right.
Various people got very close. They walked up to this machine. It had a quilted surface, and it was glowing, and it was in sort of a swamp. And so Hynek says, aha, a swamp. He says, it could be marsh gas.
Well, yeah, right, swamp gas, yeah.
And
yeah.
that made every paper in the country, and the poor man, you know, he was
Right.
he was just being trying to accommodate the Air Force. He didn't realize it was getting blown out of shape like that.
Okay, well, the point is, he debunked most of them, but did he become a believer on
I would-
certain instances?
I would classify Hynek as a believer now. In
All
fact,
right.
he was a major contributor with Close Encounters, Spielberg's.
Yes.
Beautiful movie.
Yes, it
probably
was.
as nice as you can get.
Yes, it was.
I thought the flying saucer itself was a little hokey with all the arms and stuff sticking up. If it was me, I would have just used a large
Okay.
tureen on each end, you know.
Yeah. But the question is, outside of him, are there other scientists who are believers?
Oh, yeah. I've gone to seminars at the Bridgewater College where they had Stanton Friedman. He's an atomic physicist. You probably can't get anybody any smarter.
Right.
He started off his lecture by saying the group he was in charge of had just invented a nuclear reactor that would fit in that box and produce the power of the Grand Coulee. Why they're not using it today, I don't know. Maybe it's
right.
neither here nor there. But
Right.
just 2 minutes listening to this man, and you know
All right.
he's with it.
So there are some brilliant people
Oh,
that
yes.
have become believers, at least in certain sightings.
Oh, yeah. I would say there's just enough unknowns there to pique the interest. You know, of,
Right.
anybody that's open-minded.
Okay.
You know.
We're winding down here. We're getting close to break. We just want to remind the audience that, as usual, we're getting deluged with calls, you know.
Yeah. Come on,
But
folks.
really, this is an interesting topic, and I'm sure some of you out there have probably seen something up in the sky at some time or other that you wondered about. So we'd like you to call in. We're going to take a break very shortly. But if you would call, if you're calling from Stoughton, 1-508-238-8328. We're talking with Ron Ricci of Stoughton, and he's a UFO enthusiast. Do you want us to take the break now, or? Okay, fine. And we'll be right back with our UFO topic and Ron Ricci. Thanks, and please stay tuned.
Do it drug-free. Kick. Any questions?
Before I adopted my greyhound, Elvis, he used to fetch a lot of prize money. Now the only thing he'll fetch is a bone. Through Greyhound Pets of America, you can adopt a happy, healthy, retired athlete like Elvis, just starting their prime of life. They love kids, they love attention, and they just love to show off.
Families today are watching more television than ever before, especially when one of my shows is on. Seriously, though, television can bring the gifts of knowledge and laughter, but only when you take care of another precious gift, the gift of vision. Children often insist on sitting close to the set, which may indicate vision problems such as nearsightedness and should be checked. But to avoid eye strain or fatigue, The TV should be viewed from about 6 feet. Proper lighting in the room is also important. Bright lights tend to wash out the picture and may cause a glare on the screen. A soft overall lighting makes viewing easier. But the most essential eye care for the entire family is a regular examination by a professional. It can be most important in preventing and correcting vision problems. I know, because a checkup at the right time saved my sight. Don't take your eyes for granted. They keep the pictures you really want to see in perfect focus. A public service message of the Better Vision Institute.
Okay, we're back with Community Forum. We're talking with Ron Ricci of Stoughton. He's an enthusiast of UFO sightings and flying saucers and all of that. He's got a whole array of material here, tapes and magazines and books and reports and all kinds of things. We've been talking about, apparently these UFO sightings go back to biblical times, but more recently they began to be seriously considered, I guess, around the late 40s. So we've been kind of kicking it around, and I'm always one who wants to see the evidence and so forth. And so is that a flying saucer, a picture of an alleged flying saucer in a plane? And what is that all about, Ron?
Yes, Dick. Supposedly this was taken over Vietnam.
I don't know if we can see this. Over Vietnam.
Right. If you want to shoot it, there you go.
Yeah, see up in the left-hand corner there of the photo. See that?
Right there.
That's the supposed saucer, huh?
That's I don't know. That could be or could not be. I tried to look at the pilot, and actually the pilot looks like he's looking this way.
Yeah.
You know.
But this was taken by someone else,
that's,
obviously.
Probably taken by a wingman.
Yeah. And that's the.
That's over Vietnam, so that's fairly recent.
All right.
I've heard stories now as recent as Desert Storm. They were being plagued by much the same phenomena chasing, but now the planes are different. They're using 15s, 16s, and 18s.
Yeah. Have you got any pictures there on your board? I don't mean to interrupt your schedule there, but other
Sure.
photos, I think people would be interested in seeing that.
All right.
See if you can show something tangible.
Okay.
And then people, I suppose, could say, well, they were doctored photos, or maybe it's something else. But, boy, they look pretty real.
I always loved this picture right here.
That's from San Francisco, huh?
Right. This is supposedly looking, facing east on the Frisco's Twin Peaks. And there's a beautiful shot of
Now, how does somebody explain that? What did they say that is? Because it sure looks like a flying saucer to me.
It looks like a flying saucer.
Certainly
right.
does.
I never heard really or read too much about this. It was printed in a few magazines. A nice picture.
Absolutely.
But, there's just not too much information on it.
Now, like a photo like this, are they really analyzed to make sure they haven't been doctored?
So it's funny because now these books here were prevalent. I mean, right up until about 1978.
Okay.
This happens to be in October '77.
Yeah.
And these magazines were starting to get very, very intricate. They come out with computer enhancing. And they could take a picture like that and tell you if there was a string hanging on.
Yeah, all
You know,
right.
if it was just a 1957 Ford hubcap.
Yeah, something inserted into
with
the
some
photo.
aluminum foil over it.
Yeah, right.
And when they started doing that,
Uh-huh.
all of a sudden, I didn't see too many UFO books on the market. I think maybe they were hitting a nerve. I don't know.
Well, what were they finding out?
They made statements that a lot of flying saucers pictures in question were actually real.
Were real?
Right, because of computer enhancement.
Oh, all right.
And
Okay. Now let's see if we see what else have you got there. Now that looks like kind of a close-up we're coming to now.
all right, this is considered to be a fake.
It is.
That was taken by a man called George Adamski. Supposedly it was the top half of a Hoover vacuum cleaner.
Is that
with the
right?
holes drilled.
Unbelievable.
That's what they're saying. But
Wow.
Adamski was probably the first person to claim to ride in a flying saucer. He was a self-proclaimed astronomer. He lived near Palomar in California, near the
right.
Big Scope.
Yeah, yeah.
And his story could be questioned, all except for one thing. He wrote 2 or 3 books about his trips into outer space, and of course the people he was in contact with were Venusians.
Venusians.
Very, very beautiful people. They look like hippies.
Really?
Flower children with long, flowing golden locks.
Doesn't sound like his credibility's too
slender,
good.
nubile bodies, and
Yeah.
very
Yeah,
pleasant to look at people.
yeah.
But in his stories, he claimed that when he did take off in these flying saucers, as they left the Earth's atmosphere, there would be fireflies outside these windows, little fireflies.
Really?
And that wasn't proven until the first flights of the
The space
Mercury,
program?
the Mercury program. Alan, I think it's Glenn. Since Shepard didn't go really into space, it was a subspace flight. Glenn was the first one to say that there was fireflies outside his window.
Which tied in with what this guy
Exactly,
had been saying, huh?
and probably 12 or 13 years distance.
What are those two photos up top? Again, they look like
Okay,
something.
here's one that's taken in Australia. Now, UFOs are by no means a American phenomenon.
Yeah,
These are seen all over the world, you know,
Okay.
to this day.
okay.
This one here, I wish I had. I had two better photos of it. It's in Peru. Now I had two pictures this size, and they grew legs all of a sudden. They walked away.
All right.
And
Okay.
it shows a hillside.
Yep.
This was taken supposedly by an employee of Eastman Kodak who worked at a plant in Peru,
Right.
and happened to have his trusty little brownie with him.
Uh-huh.
And he took these beautiful pictures. Now this is really doesn't show the original picture. The original picture showed a lot of detail.
All right, let me see now. Flip through a little bit there because
Okay.
I got some other questions for you. This one I don't think we can pick up too good, so
You might just be able to see the.
just see little dots like.
Yeah, that there. I don't know. That looks like it might be a radio control model. We were just having a bull session. We were trying to pick that one apart
All right.
because if you can see here, this was supposedly taken by a public works worker for the state of California.
Okay.
He was driving his truck and something flew off from his field, and you can see a little bit of dust here.
Oh, yeah.
But if it's that close, that thing would have to be very small. I don't think you could fit a person in there,
All right.
unless they were like that little man.
Let's see what else you got there, and then we'll.
Okay, here's the McMinnville photos. These were taken in 1950, I believe.
Yeah.
These were the first ones they wanted to use the computer on. And, folks, that is a flying saucer.
So then,
That was
what does the
proven.
computer prove?
Well, the computer will take the dots and actually decompose the picture
Uh-huh.
and run it through on a...
So it makes it authentic.
Exactly.
It
In other
documents
words-
its authenticity.
In other words, the man didn't have someone with a helicopter way off out of the picture view there with a string.
Yep.
This was actually no strings attached, so to speak, and you can see the movement of the flying saucer. There he shows the bottom right there,
All right.
and there's a nice side view of it.
So that's been, more or less authenticated then
Right,
by
that one has been in our
analysis.
back in the late 70s. That was one of the first ones they wanted to get to, and that's one of the first ones they said was real.
Okay. As you're going to the next one, I'm just going to say if anybody has a call, if you want to say that you had a sighting or just talk with Ron or ask him a question, 1-508-238-8328. We'd really like to hear from you. What do we have there?
Now, this was in upstate New York in '66, Lake Tiarati.
Yeah.
Had two or three, let me see, it was taken by a resident of that town, by Yonkers, and caused
all-
quite a stir.
They all look similar. I mean,
Yeah, there's a, yeah, they're like,
they all seem to have the same shape.
there's not a Caddy and a Volkswagen. They all seem to be
More or less the
Fords
same.
or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't really want to plug one.
Well, why don't you finish the, there's only two more to go. And
Okay.
Then I have some questions for you. Now, what do we got here?
Okay, here's one.
And I hope the viewers can see these. I don't know if they can. These are kind of old.
Yeah,
Things.
they're getting faded, but
Yeah.
I think this one here
Yeah.
is a fake. That looks like, I've taken many pictures. I took pictures in Washington, D.C. that had the same, I could bring them in and say I took a picture of a flying saucer.
Oh, all right.
I mean,
All right.
beautiful.
Well, what would that be then?
Well, that's probably an image off the lens of the camera itself.
Okay.
The reason they said was the men look like they're looking this way
Oh, yeah.
instead of looking up at the object. Everybody's heads, in fact, no one's heads are facing up.
Yeah, but that one down below looks like something.
All right, that was taken, if I'm not, that was in New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that sure looks like something to me, you know.
Amarillo, Texas. Now that's quite similar to the Trent, and very, very
Yeah.
similar to this one here. Like you say, there is a likeness to these. This one here was a night shot. I don't think I have the actual byline on that one, but I have an interesting photo here.
Okay. I think this is our last one, and we're still
This-
looking for calls.
This is a. I like to prove a hoax if I can too.
Go right ahead.
Okay, this is a picture widely distributed in magazines, books.
We have a call. Good evening. Hello.
Hey, my name's Bob Bishop,
Yes, Bob.
and I'm from Stoughton as well.
Yes.
One night, this was just last Tuesday night, I noticed, I was down on Glen Echo Boulevard, and I noticed this green glow, and this little guy comes over to me and, points at my car. I was scared like hell. He comes over and pops the hood on my Subaru and takes the alternator off. The next morning, I woke up, and there was $25 on my doorstep.
Gee, that's pretty good.
That sounds like one of our believers.
Did you look like a mib?
Well, thanks a lot, Bob.
Should we get back to? Oh,
Well, Bob's going out to check the Glen Echo Boulevard again.
okay. You better bring your.
Right, but
Geiger counter.
hey, we'll take any calls,
Exactly. Well, listen, that's
I understand. Go right ahead now.
Okay, this is a very widely distributed picture. They say is a real flying saucer. I don't know if this one's been enhanced or not, but there's an inset of a flying saucer dogging this Martin B-57.
All right.
And for a long time, it was considered gospel. It's, could be a real picture. But then I always was, when I was a kid, I used to send to the plane companies themselves for pictures.
Sure.
My own scrapbook.
Sure.
I said, gee, I've seen that picture. And sure enough, I dug through my box of stuff, and there was an old Martin envelope, Martin aircraft.
Yeah.
And the booklet had this picture, which I cut out of it.
The same picture.
Same picture. I mean, I've gone over this with a magnifying glass. I mean,
All
this
right.
is here and that's there. That's
So that thing
exactly
was
the same
inserted then, huh?
picture. It was either scrubbed out of this one,
Yep.
or it was inserted in that.
All right.
I would say that was put in.
Okay.
That's a fake.
All right. Let me ask you this. Of all the sightings that there have been, like if a whole bunch of people would have called tonight about sightings on the East Coast almost simultaneously, would any government agency automatically look, who would look into that? Or would they just say, well, who knows?
Well, from what I understand,
What would happen?
The Air Force is still very much interested.
They
but
are.
They won't tell you.
All right.
The FBI has their own files. The CIA has their own files.
Do the people in the organizations and even yourself, you really feel there's something to this? Do you feel these are beings from outer space, really? I mean, is that your thought?
If I could show this, I scratched out the name because I couldn't get his permission. It was a neighbor that had seen it too.
Yep.
Back in '71, here's one that I saw. And I was heading on Central Street, heading towards Avon.
Yep.
I was just past the town barn in Stoughton on Central Street. And out of the corner of my eye, I see a big flash up over the hill and over towards Avon. So I slowed way down, pulled over the side, looked out the window, and there it is. I saw something climbing out in a steep climb.
All right.
Stuck my head out the window, and there she was. She was a flying saucer. She was shooting sparks off, and she was turning red
Didn't look
and
like an
white.
airplane or
No,
anything?
I could tell that this was an airplane. This was just, it was just going so fast. And I was acquainted at the time with a Navy flyer at Weymouth, and I went right home and wrote this up. I saw one before, but I had never written the story.
Yeah.
So he's very skeptical, and rightly so. He's
Sure.
a level-headed flyer, and he says, "Well, look, let me take a copy of it in. I'm going on duty, and I'll see you in 4 days, 3 or 4 days.
All right.
Let me see what went into the thing." He was sort of horse laughing as he left.
Yeah.
Well, you come back in 4 or 5 days, 3 or 4 days, whatever.
Yeah.
And he says, you're a pretty good observer. He says, we had a dozen of those reports, word for word, for what I had written down.
At the same time.
Exactly.
All
All
right.
reported the same night.
So you weren't the only one that saw that?
Right, my neighbor had seen it too, but he was more or less back home.
Yeah.
He was walking his dog. But he didn't see it take off. He saw it as it just sort of drifted over.
All right. What did it look like, Ron?
Uh,
This is at night now.
Brilliant. I mean, it was brilliant light
A glow, a real.
from within. The whole saucer radiated.
Again, the saucer
Right,
shape.
and I could see as he was moving up at a tremendous speed. I could see the heat waves radiating off the stomach of the ship. You know, you could see like you heat up a frying pan, it gets
Right.
red, and you know,
Right,
as
right.
it's hitting the air.
Right.
Well, shooting sparks, pinwheels. Then when it went directly overhead, it slowed down and just turned into a dull red light, and sort of drifted over towards Sharon, Walpole way.
Right.
And,
You know, the question that I ask, and I know you have known you for years, but we had a couple of months ago, we had a priest and some people on that were talking about the, I guess we'd have to say, the alleged apparitions of the Blessed Virgin over in
Yeah.
Yugoslavia and out in Arizona, I guess. And the question I really asked, and I always do, and something like this I would too, is the ones that report this, I mean, I would say you really have to subject them to some, because people's minds can play tricks on them.
Oh, yeah.
And if you want to believe in this, sometimes you can look up and really think you see something. So when they have these, do they really look at the people? Are these really credible people? I'm sure there's some kooks out there
I think
too.
if it's a real, if it's a
You know what I'm
widely
saying?
reported sighting,
Yeah.
they grill them pretty good. They get.
What would be a widely reported sighting? What are we
Well, I
talking?
would say
Hundreds of people?
No, I would say the Arnold sighting, the Washington National sighting.
How many? What's the most people that have ever?
Oh, thousands.
Really?
Yes, they've been spotted over towns, but generally there was one where they saw thousands of UFOs twinkling over the town, but that one there proved to be a burst balloon.
Yeah, well, see, this is what I'm saying. What do a lot of these sightings turn out to be?
Generally, they can be explained.
But, like, what would
Did
they
you
be?
ever walk out of your house at night and just stand and probably see an airliner approaching
Yep.
maybe to make a landing at Logan?
Sure.
And, gee, those landing lights, they scare you sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you sit there and watch it for a few seconds, oh, that's just an airplane.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
I think the average viewer is pretty intelligent. They can pick out
Can
an
there
airplane from a.
Can gas, the swamp gas, be a factor?
I don't think in anything way up in the air.
How
It'd have
about
to be a low level?
You mentioned balloons or
balloons,
something.
balloons.
How about some of these? We've been shooting stuff up there, and Russia has Sputnik
There's,
and all that stuff.
They say
Space
I don't
debris
know how
or-
many thousands of pieces of space junk floating around, but
So that
you can even tell that too.
You
because,
can.
If you remember Telstar
yeah.
in
Yeah.
in Sputnik, and
Yeah,
we
sure.
had the space stations.
Okay.
There was a great interest, and they told you when they were going to be overhead back then. They don't tell you anything now, but you went outside and looked at it, and it sort of had that shimmering effect.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that's an object just sort of gliding through space. So.
Is your thought, or the groups that follow this, that the government may have actually have some tangible evidence that they've spirited away somewhere?
Well, the Roswell sighting, I would say.
They cleaned up that
yeah,
field pretty.
you know, that's where there's smoke, there's fire, and
Yeah.
even experiments on our own. Here's a book here. It was written in the 50s.
So scientists have really definitely taken a look at this stuff, huh? You know,
oh,
I mean,
yes,
qualified,
definitely.
credible people.
Supposedly in World War II, they were trying to find an electronic way to mask visibility in our ships to keep them from being sunk by U-boats.
Right. You want to refer to that now?
Right, and here's one written by Morris K. Jessup. It's called The Case for the UFO, and it refers, right at the beginning of the book, to an experiment in Philadelphia,
Right.
which was used to make a destroyer invisible.
Oh yeah, you told me about this.
Yes,
Explain this.
supposedly they had taken a boat out of, just launched. She was just launched out of Philadelphia Navy Yard.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a time period from when they launch them to when they commission them.
Okay.
Well, the Navy wanted to do some experiments with it, so they said, well, let us have the boat for a couple more months than with normal, then you can send her out.
All right.
They installed some machinery on board that was like television dishes. one on the fantail, one on the bow, one up behind the where they steer it, and a huge electromagnetic generator in the engine room.
All right.
Supposedly they ran tests on this boat, and it was a howling success.
Now, what does it do? I'm not sure I follow.
When
What
they turn
happened
the
here?
magnets on,
Yeah.
it just makes a cone of invisibility or a
Around
dome
that ship?
Around, right. All you should really be able to see is the water line on the ship
Really?
with no ship. Well, they ran the experiment and it worked beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
They shut the
The
magnets.
ship doesn't disappear.
No,
You just can't
supposedly
see
the
it.
ship was still there, but she was just being, the molecules were being scrambled.
So you can't see it.
Right. This was supposedly only to work on radar. So,
Oh, okay.
Not visually.
All right.
But when they did the experiment, they some fellow ran into the radar room and says, "Gee, it's invisible." He said, "Yeah, it's not on the scope." He said, "No, I mean the ship's invisible. It's not there anymore. There's a little ship beside it, but we don't see the Eldridge." And
So what happened?
oh, they were all were a huge success. I mean,
Yeah.
they were trying to prove. I think they were working on Einstein's theory of unified field.
Oh, all right. Okay.
And
Okay.
but then someone threw a monkey wrench in.
Yeah.
The boat disappeared again. It appeared and
Yeah.
then disappeared again. This time, it disappeared for a longer, according to the story, longer period of time.
Uh-huh.
And not only did it disappear, but supposedly it reappeared in a shipyard 100 miles away from Philadelphia.
Oh, my gosh.
Disappeared from there and then reappeared again in Philadelphia Harbor. And from what I understand, it was a mechanical success, but the people on board
Yeah.
didn't quite like it. I mean, a lot of them, they said, were fused into the walls
Oh.
because their molecules had been disrupted.
Are you serious?
Yes, and when their boat finally reappeared, that they found men inside the walls of the ship still alive.
Wow. This is unreal.
Yeah,
Again,
very,
hush hush type thing.
Yes, if you wrote to get any information, say the public relations of the Navy, there's a standard form letter
Uh-huh.
saying that experiment never even took place.
All right. Bouncing around now because we're getting down now. We're moving right along here. I'm just curious. What do the people that follow this think that they believe in these pretty much? Where do they think they're from, and why are they snooping around?
Well,
whoever they are.
I guess
you know.
the theories there are probably as varied as when you go out and look at the sky.
Is for most who believe, they figure they're
Well,
probably observing us.
Right. A lot of them say they're from the Betty and Barney Hill story. Was probably one of the most famous abduction cases.
Oh, is that the New Hampshire case?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Under hypnosis, Betty Hill claimed that when she was being examined and she was talking to this.
These people had been taken into the ship and up or something, right?
And they
Yeah.
gave them a medical,
Yeah.
and
All right, go ahead. I
probably the
interrupted.
most advanced medical they probably ever had. And she happened to see a chart on the wall, and she asked the guy. She doesn't really, from what, if I remember the book, she didn't really ask him, but she thought it, and he picked it right up. And he said, "That's our travel. That's our travel map." And she remembered it. Under hypnosis, she remembered the exact position of every little dot on that map.
Now, did that mean anything to the hypnotist or the scientist?
Yes. It was proven later on. Well, the man on the ship says, well, all these solid lines are direct routes to various planets. The dotted lines we're just striking out now into new territory. And one happened to be over here.
And she remembered these?
She remembered that under hypnosis. And, of course, the scientists, astronomers, were very skeptic.
I would
Very,
think.
very skeptical. Yeah. And this housewife in the Midwest, Mrs. Fish, I think it was.
Yeah.
And she had a room. She ran string from the ceiling to the floor, and she put a bead everywhere there was a star.
Right.
So she had a whole room,
Right.
and all beads hanging. So she took a picture of Betty Hill's, what
she
down.
said, yeah.
She says, let me see if I can match. Now, the astronomers until that time failed to match up any such
So
star system.
they debunked it.
They wrote it right off. Well, she hung up her strings and stuff, and she worked and worked and worked. Finally, she matched. She got a match. And I
Right.
guess it left the astronomers with their mouths wide open, and they have to give this housewife from the Midwest some astronomical credit, you know. And
So-
it is a known, now it is a known system of
So that's Betty and Bonnie Hill, huh?
Right.
That was really looked into. What's the conclusion on that? That they're telling the truth, or that under hypnosis? I mean,
Yeah.
they're not kook. They weren't kooky people, were they?
That was a very, very controversial case, being from straight-laced New Hampshire.
Right.
It was an interracial couple.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There was a lot of, a lot of controversy involved. You were talking about, they did a pregnancy test on Betty Hill that wasn't developed until a few years ago.
Really? Oh, you
Yeah.
mean the beings did?
Yes, they did a test where they went in through the navel, which was unheard of back then, which they now do.
All right. Let me get this out because we're getting down to a few minutes here. These people that say they actually had contact and conversed or saw these, do these people look like human beings? Do they talk English? Or can they be understood?
From what I understand, that they just patch right into whatever tongue you're speaking in.
They do.
They can speak, they're so advanced.
All right. But do they look like human beings?
Now I've heard, we've had the little man one.
Yeah.
We've had ones that look like a guy in a deep sea diving suit.
All right.
But generally, in the last few years, they've all sort of taken fellows with big heads, squinty eyes, slits for a mouth.
Like E.T.?
Yeah, with a little more substance.
Really?
A little more, a little more well-fed.
E.T.'s our favorite.
E.T. was kind of.
He's our favorite alien, right?
Oh yeah, and but basically on that idea, and shot about maybe 3.5 feet.
Let me ask you this: if the government had in fact recovered one of these beings and took him away, and why would, because they think they'd be afraid of a panic?
That's what I think.
You don't think people could take that?
Don't forget now, back in '43, they were still watching Buck Rogers.
Well, yeah, but I
Flash
mean
forward.
now I'm talking like
But
'92.
I think if it's going to break, it'll break within the next few years.
Is that material very highly classified, like the JFK stuff that they're trying to get access to now?
From what I understand, even with the Freedom of Information Act, a lot of this stuff is so sensitive because they say it contains secret stuff vital to the defense.
Oh, all
you
right.
You can really, you have to give them that,
Are you yourself, as an individual, convinced that some of these things exist? That there are there are vehicles or from
Well,
outer space?
I only really can say what I saw.
All right.
You
But
know?
you've also read a lot, and you
Oh,
see
yeah.
pictures, and you've
Yeah.
got all this material you've read, and
I've seen things a couple times and I can't explain it.
all right.
So
Okay, we're down to a minute. Where does this all go? Oh, the other thing I wanted to ask too is they always say, and I need the last half minute. This is real quick. That they see these things around high tension wires. Is there something they might have to get recharged or something?
that's a theory.
Real quick
That
now.
they pick up free juice right off the lines.
Okay. Okay. I'm afraid I'm going to have to say that's it.
Fine.
Thank you very much. We'll have
Thank
you
you,
on
Rick.
again. Been talking with Ron Ricci from Stoughton, all about UFOs and flying saucers, so I'm sure you're all going to run outside now and look up into the sky, right? And start calling your local police departments and everything else.
Send me any alternators you might have too.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much. Very interesting. We're going to get off on time again tonight. Next week we have the Stoughton Candidates Night program, the 16th. Selectmen and redevelopment candidates will be here, so we hope you'll tune in. 90-minute program. Thank you all for tuning in. A little bit of a light, change of pace subject tonight, and we enjoyed it. Wish you all a very pleasant good evening. Thank you. That went quick.